welcome back to channel Space Moose. In our journey through time, we're reaching year 1981. There was only 6 sets in that year, but it's a fair number. In terms of availability of new parts, there was very few novelties. One of them was specialized grabber arm for the hinged arm. Another one was this type of engine with a plate that could be attached from the bottom of the spacecraft. Another novelty was a kind of ladder piece. It could be used as a ladder for climbing into the cockpit or as a grill for engine. Very universal part. What else was new? Oh, I'll get into it when discussing this model. The most important new part was inverted slope, like matching the slopes that were in use from the very beginning. In 1981, you could get inverted slope to make cockpits. Alright, so we'll get into the sets now. The smallest set in 1981 was 6801. It was called the Rocket Sled. It looks like kind of sled. Steering wheel for controlling it, computer behind the pilot. Pilot was equipped with radio for communication and a blaster for self-defense. Another set, slightly bigger, was 6822. It's equipped with the new engines, so it could be landing on them. It's hard to say if it's a flying craft because there's no wings. It could be a kind of hovercraft. It's a work machine with the movable grabber arm in the back, space for the pilot, and not much more. Then we had 6842. It was a kind of a speeder bike with a very sleek design and powerful engine, perhaps too big of an engine for the craft of this size. But for the parts that were available back then, it was fairly aerodynamic and it gave impression of speed. Next set was a fairly big rover, and this time the designers came to the conclusion that using wheels from the town set's cars, they were not good enough for moon off-road. This time they used the wheels from a truck. The rover was articulated, and in the back we had a movable launcher with a small spacecraft. The only problem was that there was only one crew member, so if he drove the launcher into launching position, then he had to switch from the steering position to the flying craft, and after takeoff he had to leave the launcher unattended. One of the bigger sets from that year was another rover, the biggest rover so far, and with the biggest wheels. But for the rover of this size, the wheels were still not big enough, because you can see how small was the ground clearance here. It was always getting caught if playing on the carpet. Slightly bigger wheels would solve the problems, but you would have to raise the whole the whole unit a little bit higher to make space, to make sure that the wheels wouldn't get caught on these elements. The rover was equipped with almost enclosed cockpit. The only opening was on the top, but the visibility was great in all directions. And there was a big cargo compartment on the rover, and it was used to carry you could call it a mini base or an outpost that can be transported on the rover to the designated area. And then if you open the back, the outpost can be left. There's the second crew member inside. He has 4 computers to work with, 2 radars on the roof of the station. And the roof, you can open the roof and have a look from the top. And there was a smart mechanism which allowed to collect the station when the mission was over, close the back, and bring it back home. And the biggest and probably the most interesting set from that year was the Starfleet Voyager 6929. It was a beautifully designed spaceship with a lot of sensors or armament, depending what your imagination told you it would be. Fully enclosed cockpit with the new parts on the back. On the bottom you can see the transparent part in the front, non-transparent in the back. Opening on the side like in early sets. And in the back of the spacecraft you had the cargo compartment once again. After opening it, you could drop the container with supplies on the planet. The container as it should be, it's boxy with opening on both sides. But for the size of the container, there's very few equipment inside. And it's a bit weird. An axe, frying pan, or maybe a kind of tool, and a blaster. But if you had equipment from other sets, you could fill up the container before dropping it on the planet. And the design of this spaceship was very cool. It was well thought, because the part which was the most comfortable for grabbing it was actually in the center of gravity, which made flying it around the room or in the garden very comfortable for kids. And you have to admit, it was fairly sleek design. So that's about it for the sets from 1981. We'll see you in the next chapter about year 1982.